So we are coming to the end of many weeks talking about this great book called Mastery: The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment by George Leonard. This book was written in 1992. Okay, I just want to summarize mastery according to George Leonard. So he defines mastery as the mysterious process during which what is at first difficult becomes progressively easier and more pleasurable through practice. If there's any sure route to success and fulfillment in life, it is to be found in the long term, essentially goalless process of mastery, to practice for the sake of the practice itself, not for the result. Okay, so that really takes some practice to understand what he means by that. Why should something be goalless? Okay, so we have just been looking at chapter 12, pitfalls along the path of mastery. Okay, it's like in coaching, we know where we want to get to. We know where we are now, our current reality, and then we look at the obstacles, along that path. So, what are some pitfalls along the path of mastery? Last week we discussed 6 pitfalls along the path of mastery: conflicting way of life, obsessive goal orientation. Third one was poor instruction. Fourth is lack of competitiveness. Fifth is over competitiveness. And sixth, laziness. Okay, so all of you who are here on time now, that last one certainly doesn't apply to you, especially if you are here listening on a Labor Day public holiday. So this week we'll look at 7 more pitfalls you might run into on your journey. So the seventh one is injuries. George Leonard says, if your path is a physical one, if your path is a physical one, and if you're like most of us, you'll probably encounter injuries somewhere along the way. Serious injuries can take you off the path temporarily or even permanently. Except in heavy contact sports, most of these serious injuries are probably avoidable. Well, not just heavy contact sports. If you do, rock climbing outdoors, you can get hurt. Okay? So people get hurt because of obsessive goal orientation or lack of awareness. Okay, lack of awareness. So be fully present, George Leonard says. Earlier we talked about the fifth key to mastery. The fifth key is the edge. Okay? And so addressing that, George says, surpassing previous limits involves negotiating with your body, not ignoring or overriding its messages. Negotiation involves awareness. Avoiding serious injury is less a matter of being cautious than of being conscious. So it's less a matter of being cautious than of being conscious. Now, recently, we have an example of that. Susan slipped, she fell, she broke her wrist, and she's out of stand-up paddling for about 8 weeks. Okay, now I'm not sure whether it's a lack of awareness. She was not careful where she put her foot and she slipped. But it's the consequences on a journey to mastery are quite um, quite discouraging when you can't practice for 8 weeks. Okay. Now all this is also true to some extent of mental and emotional as well as physical injuries. So it's not just physical injuries, but also mental and emotional. And in a sales business, in a business of entrepreneurship where there's a lot of failure, rejection, the mental toil, the emotional toil is quite high. Okay. Now the eighth pitfall is drugs. George Leonard says drugs can give you the illusion of getting the immediate success this culture is always promising you. Travelers on the fast track can use drugs to experience climactic upward surges without spending any time on the plateau. So drugs are used to, as a shortcut. At first it might seem to work, but regular use leads inevitably to disaster. If you're on drugs, you're not on the path. Okay, so for those of us who are goody goodies, this is not even a pitfall you would consider. But when people look at us and they They look at the supplements we take. Why do people not take supplements? Because they consider them drugs. Okay, so of course, here he's referring to harmful or illegal substances that are used to enhance performance. But taking good supplements actually does what the word suggests. It supplements your effort. I went to uh, look at some synonyms for supplement. Supplement means to augment, to increase, to add to boost, to amplify, to complete, to complement. So there is a good use, okay, but there is a distinction. Okay, when we uh, when we think short term, because harmful drugs, many of the things out there are very, very dangerous. Okay. Ninth pitfall is prizes and medals. Excessive use of external motivation can slow and even stop your journey to mastery. Studies show that rewarding school children by giving them gold stars initially speeds up their learning, but their progress soon levels off even if you increase the number of stars. When you stop giving stars, their progress falls to a level lower than that of matched groups of children who got no stars in the first place. Then they did various psychological studies, and a report on the physiological, so this is physical, limits of running speed shows that the major factor stopping the improvement of a champion's runner's speed is setting a record or winning an important medal. So when a champion runner sets a record or wins a medal, his performance slows down. Okay, so realize that the ultimate reward is not a gold medal, but the path itself. And I think that's why George Leonard talks about the goalless path and not the result. Okay. So as I said last week, in when we talked about the pitfall of competitiveness, you know, um, aim to achieve your personal best. Okay, you will do your best whether or not there are external prizes. If the goal is to, continuously and have constant and never-ending improvement, your personal best. And this one is a good example. She sold 35 sets of Reset at the last LTO. The top prize was a month's supply of Beauty Focus Collagen Plus, okay, our next LTO product. But that wasn't the motivating factor for this one, okay, because she actually has been using Collagen Plus from the USA for some months. So she was motivated uh, by wanting to do better than she did at the December LTO. Okay. 10th pitfall is vanity. George Leonard says it's possible that one of the reasons you get on the path of mastery was to look good. But to learn something new of any significance, you have to be willing to look foolish. And I think those of us who started SUP, we realized how foolish we looked, falling off all the time, vomiting and all this, Um, and George Leonard says, even after years of practice, you will still take pratfalls. Pratfalls mean you fall on your ass, okay? If you're always thinking about appearances, you can never attain the state of concentration that's necessary for effective learning and top performance. Okay, some of the golfers, GP would know that they have to change their stroke. They want to change their how they hit the ball. They've got to basically give up what has worked for them and start all over again, which means they're going to lose for some time. Okay. Now you may say you are not vain. I think many of us here are quite mature. We're not vain. In fact, you're very humble. Well, let me ask you. Okay, let me ask you. Do you get defensive when someone points out something you've done wrong or that you could do better? Okay. Even in our close team, I've seen people flare out, when they don't want to talk about it anymore. Well, that's vanity. Okay, and it's harmful because no one wants to tell you, be a mirror to say you're ugly, so they just keep quiet and you keep the mirror, and how can you improve? How can you get better? Okay, so aim to be a lifelong learner, not an expert. Okay. Success and growth in our particular business depends on recruitment. You are recruiting people to leave their comfort zones to start a new business. So what you're looking for is you're looking for willing learners. And You will attract learners if you are a learner yourself. You know, putting aside that vanity, handling that pitfall. The 11th pitfall is dead seriousness. Okay. George Leonard says, without rough laughter, the rough and rocky places on the path might be too painful to bear. I think that use of the word path, I like it, because if you've been on some of the paths that we trek on, it's really rough and rocky. Okay. Now, so he says, humor not only lightens your load, it also broadens your perspective. To be deadly serious is to suffer tunnel vision. To be able to laugh at yourself clears the vision. When choosing fellow voyagers, beware of grimness, self-importance, and the solemn eye. They say laughter is the best medicine. When I read my Reader's Digest, there's one section, laughter is the best medicine. Okay. And certainly, we need healing from the emotional injuries in a sales business like ours. Okay. And this is actually scroll 7, isn't it? I will laugh at the world. Scroll 7, I will laugh at the world. So important. 12th pitfall is inconsistency. So George Leonard says, consistency of practice is the mark of the master. Continuity of time and place where this is feasible. Okay, for example, when when you travel overseas or go on a holiday, sometimes it's not feasible to be consistent with certain things. So continuity of time and place can establish a rhythm that buoys you up, carries you along. There is even value in repeating favorite rituals before, during, and after practice. I think you hear stories of how sportsmen they have a particular set of things that they do, each time before they compete. Okay, so inconsistency not only loses you practice time, but makes everything more difficult when you do get around to practicing. But if you should happen to miss a few sessions, don't use that as an excuse to quit entirely. The path of mastery takes many twists and turns and calls for a certain flexibility of strategy and action. Okay, so life is not ideal, it's not perfect. There will be storms along the way. During my holiday in Kuching, although I put on 3 kg, so I put on 3 kg. Putting on 3 kg means that eating was a focus. It took a lot of time. Okay, so even though I put on 3 kg, I maintained many of my basic practices. Okay, got up early to do my morning pages, to do my quiet time, stretching with the band, doing my shoulder stretching, doing my squats, doing my push-ups. But I missed pull-ups because there wasn't a bar. I missed walking 10,000 steps, and I couldn't climb stairs. Okay. In April also, I stopped doing the scrolls after doing it for 10 straight months. Okay, 10 scrolls. Okay. So this month I have to got to get back into it. Okay, this morning I started again scroll 1. So we need to learn to get back into routine when we have this time of inconsistency. Okay, my final and third, the final and 13th pitfall is perfectionism. Okay, perfectionism. I read an human resource article uh, entitled, "Is perfection a weakness or a strength in the workplace?" And this is what it says. Perfectionism is a much bigger weakness than job applicants and interviewers probably assume. The obvious advantages of a perfectionist in the workplace include their strong motivation, willingness to work longer hours, and high engagement. On the flip side, perfectionism is strongly and consistently related to numerous detrimental work and non-work outcomes, including higher levels of burnout, stress, workaholism, anxiety, and depression. Okay, so generally, perfectionism is not a good thing. Um, so perfectionism has got some good points, especially when you compare to laziness, the other pitfall of apathy. But perfectionism can be negative if, like over competitiveness, the other pitfall, if it stops you from enjoying the process, okay, and leads to physical and mental injuries. Actually, at this point, I would appreciate if Susan or someone could summarize the difference between perfectionism and excellence, because we talk about excellence as well. Okay, if someone could just summarize this for us, what's the difference between perfectionism and excellence, which I think is a good thing. So George Leonard points out that Technology has brought so many masterful performances into our homes. And these performances are not only meticulously rehearsed, but recorded repeatedly with the very best passages spliced together and the entire recording electronically enhanced. Compared to this, how can we even talk about mastery? Now, he wrote this, what is technological improvements in 1932, 30 years ago. And, technology has improved so much now. Our phones can enhance our looks, apps can edit things in incredible ways. So, it's so easy to end up trying to copy, be like a technologically enhanced artificial being. Okay. So, George says, then there are those of us who are simply self-critical. We don't need to compare other people. We just ourselves are self-critical. Even without comparing ourselves to the world's greatest, we set such high standards for ourselves that neither we nor anyone else could ever meet them. And nothing is more destructive to creativity than this. Mastery is not about perfection. It's about a process, a journey. The master is the one who stays on the path day after day, year after year. The master is the one who is willing to try and fail and try again for as long as he or she lives. Okay, so let me say that again. The master is the one who is willing to try and fail and try again for as long as he or she lives. And when you're willing to try and fail and try again, you are very forgiving. You attract a community of people who are all triers and they become empathetic, sympathetic, great companions to be on the journey with. Okay. So next week we'll look at the remaining part of mastery. Okay, it's called mastering the commonplace. What we do with the ordinary activities in our life.